Very interesting article in Business Week about Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's rulers find themselves in a trap of their own making, are finding that 2 decades of economic mismanagement and brutal repression have led them into a trap from which there's little chance of escape. If they implement the political and democratic reforms needed to win the financial support the economy needs from international donors, they're likely to lose the next election. If they don't, their people, propelled by the extreme hardship brought about by austerity measures imposed by the IMF and World Bank, may remove them through an uprising. Already, a currency devaluation has slashed the value of wages by 90% in just 6 months. Continued brutal crackdowns will thus increase the risk of Zimbabwe reaching a tipping point, similar to movements in Sudan and Algeria, where sustained protests brought down entrenched regimes. Finance Minister Mthuli Q, we can declare victory on the fiscal front. Everything that I say, I implement. A basic refrigerator retails for the equivalent of about 7 months' gross salary for a civil servant. Few can afford to shop for such items. And Koob, a Cambridge-trained economics professor, says the situation is similar in neighbouring South Africa, where he once lived. That's untrue. In South Africa, an average monthly salary for a government worker is enough to buy 6 refrigerators. From 2010 to 2016, pay for the 400,000 government workers was raised to a level where it accounted for more than 90% of tax revenue. The country is saddled with $9 billion in external debt and unable to borrow more until its arrears to international creditors, such as the World Bank, are met. About a quarter of the population, about 14 million, once considered to be Africa's most educated, has emigrated. He introduced an unpopular tax on mobile money, reintroduced the Zimbabwe dollar in June, and boasts that the country has been running budget surpluses since January. On top of this, a drought has devastated agriculture, and the country will need to import 800,000 tons of corn, almost half its annual consumption. It's unclear how it will pay. Slumping hydropower output has led to daily power outages as long as 18 hours. People are very, very angry, says Japhet Moyo, Secretary General of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, who forecast spontaneous riots similar to looting that occurred 20 years ago. It puzzles ordinary people. How do you have a surplus when government-run hospitals don't have medication? What is this man talking about? 29th of July, I said Zimbabwe is a laboratory experiment, with inflation last clocking 176%. And I said there is a straw and camel's back moment, but predicting that moment is always a fool's errand, but I think predict it we can. This photograph, of course, went viral around the world. The Zimbabwe police were here. Harare, August 16, 2019, AP. Muzwaki via Kobo 3. 21st of January, I said, what is clear to me is that Zimbabwe is at a tipping point moment. I also said there is a correlation between high inflation and revolutionary conditions, and Zimbabwe is a classic example. October 2018, when they blew $1.3 billion ahead of the election, I said, the government's voodoo economics, where it spent $1.3 billion pump priming the economy ahead of the election, money it did not have, was the straw that broke the camel's back. Zimbabwe is to issue cash notes soon to replace the country's quasi-currency that was introduced 3 years ago in a failed attempt to counter a crippling shortage of cash that's pushed inflation to the highest rate since 2008. The return to a fully fledged local currency exchangeable outside the country's borders will be backed by an undisclosed amount of foreign exchange reserves golden loans. I think we'll never know what that is, how much is backing it.